Coming, that's also happened. So when you're looking at the state of this roster, does it make a lot more sense now? Are you surprised they've been able to do what they've been able to do? And how does losing Brunson affect what they're going to look like next year?
Yeah, so I mean, the roster and the additions that they've made with losing Jalen Brunson, obviously bringing in Christian Wood and even bringing in someone like JaVale McGee, they haven't had a true rim running 7-foot center the way JaVale McGee will operate in the system in a very long time. And so the team is going to function very differently than last year. Obviously, losing Jalen Brunson, not ideal. That I personally believe is going to hurt them more so in the long term than the short term. I think next year, between having Christian Wood, having JaVale McGee as this somewhat paint presence, and then getting even Tim Hardaway Jr. back to add to your depth off the bench and your points production, I think as far as offensive points production, they're going to be at somewhat of a net zero with losing Jalen Brunson and having someone like Spencer Dinwiddie to step up into that starting lineup and be that secondary playmaker. I think they'll kind of find themselves in an okay spot in that regard. But in terms of long-term options or pathways to really take that next step up, they do have a lot of hurdles in front of them to overcome. And I think that they're going to see that, which is why I really do think that they need to try and have a realistic conversation about this Russell Westbrook scenario, or even a couple of other players who are on high volume contracts towards the end of that, their contracts. And so going into next year, I think they're going to be fine. But in terms of looking at the rest of the West and how a lot of teams have beefed up or are coming back healthy, I do think they're in for a bit of a rude awakening. I really do believe that.
So when you say rude awakening, though, do you think this is a worse team on paper than what they were last year?
Yes.
Do you think they believe that?
No.
Interesting. Because that's what I'm curious about. Is like you make that Wood trade because you think that this will, like, you can basically the Dwight Powell minutes are gone, right? Like this is just like we don't have to worry about Maxi Kleba doing a lot at the 5 against the Warriors or whoever. Like we can just play Christian Wood 36 minutes and just live and die by him. Does that fit with him and Luka? Is it a clean fit? Is there some potential for some really rough growing pains between the two of them, or is it something where Christian Wood can unlock more in his game in Dallas? Because I think the usage rate should go up, and I think there's going to be more expected of him, right?
Yeah, I think naturally you're going to have to anticipate and prepare for some growing pains, but I do believe Christian Wood is very aware of this opportunity that has kind of fallen into his lap. He's playing with by far the best point guard he's ever played with in his career. He's in a contract year. He's going to get, as a guy who can stretch the floor, he's going to get more open threes and more opportunities to be more impactful in ways that just have more variety and again, like you said, more usage than he ever has in his career. And he's going to be in a competitive situation. So even for him specifically, from a like selfish standpoint, selfish is the wrong word, but for him looking at potentially this next contract, whether it be in Dallas or whether it not, I mean, the Mavericks are going to have a lot of eyes on them because they have Luka, but this for him specifically is an opportunity to kind of rise to the occasion, figure out where he fits in a competitive system. You know, what do you need me to do? And it does everything that he's saying looks like, hey, I just want to come in and impact winning, which is great, but we need to see it on the floor and how things blend together. There have been some conversations about him potentially starting the year coming off of the bench, which I can't even get into how absurd I think that is. I don't know. Some of the things that I've heard come out with JaVale in the starting lineup, potentially Christian Wood coming off of the bench, a lot of it I'm just not on board with. And I don't know how much truth there is to it because, not to go too far off track, but with the JaVale McGee signing, it did seem like they were like, hey, we need that 7-foot big veteran big man. And the only way to go get someone like JaVale McGee was to offer them more than 2 years and offer them the MLE instead of that minimum to come to somewhere like Dallas instead of a Brooklyn, a Phoenix, a Miami, whatever the case may be. So he also said that he was promised a starting spot as a part of that negotiation. So
JaVale was.
So I don't know how much truth there really is to that. I don't know if they're going to get to camp, start running with the lineups and say, actually, no, no. But seems like I personally think there's a decent chance that they start the year starting JaVale McGee next to Christian Wood and having to realize that, oh yeah, that's probably not our most effective lineup. And unfortunately, it's going to cost them a few games to do so.
Interesting. Corban, what do you make of their roster when you look at this group and where they're running right now? Do you think they kind of overachieved and they kind of take a step back like Lauren and that there is more to do? Or do you think there's more upside without Jalen Brunson and that there might just be another level for this Mavs team for the role guys?
I mean, see, it's hard to follow after the Mavs expert here, but I'm going to take the easy route and agree with her. Lauren, I agree completely. I just honestly think about it. Like, Jalen Brunson stepped up in a major way down the stretch, second half of the season, totally in the playoffs, right? You had a chemistry, you had a set kind of rotation, you had a style of play that worked. Like, subtly, that's changed a little bit. The guard depth is, I imagine, a little shaken just with the loss of Brunson and not really, in my opinion, adequate replacement there. JaVale McGee and Christian Wood, Christian Wood on his own was like, okay, that's cool. If that's your big win of the offseason, is it really a win? I don't know. Actually, I do. It's not. But like bringing JaVale McGee in only like complicates it potentially, which it shouldn't even do that. I'm not even getting to the contract JaVale has, which like get your money, man. But also, wow, why? It's a lot going on, and it's funky. And mind you, Jason Kidd's worked with funky this year with Dallas this past season. Different lineups. He didn't quite go all Rick Carlisle on him, but like there were some different strategic mismatches and
he was using Frankie Smokes and Josh Green and company, and I don't think Carlisle's putting them on the floor.
There you go. Yes, it was a more effective Carlisle in terms of the meddling, but it indeed was, some units that were interesting, that were unconventional. Well, now you've made it funkier, but that doesn't mean you made it better. And I am of the opinion that they did not. I think Luka has a little more on the offensive end to manage. I think Christian Wood as an offensive play finisher is great, but it's not like he's a guy who can create his own shot consistently either. So you didn't bring another guy to do that. You just brought a few more guys who can finish plays and more pressure on Luka because you took away the one other guy consistently. You still got Spencer Dinwiddie, of course, who could also, make plays for himself and others. So it's like, I don't know, more weapons, but also less help. Like, how you want to do that, So I look at this almost like, I don't know, it feels like a LeBron from last year in terms of the roster, like messing around. And now, mind you, Lakers brought Russell Westbrook, totally different thing. But it's like you had a system that worked. Like
they kind of remind me of the Cavs with LeBron the first time, like the Cavs, like Jonas Ilgauskas Cavs, where it's like, oh man, LeBron literally has to do everything, and like you hope Mo Williams just overachieves enough, and you're like, well, this probably can't win a title, but Luka's so good that their ceiling is just so naturally high that we can't really panic.
Exactly. And what makes me annoyed about that, because you're right, it's a perfect example, but like, unlike those LeBron teams, in this case, last year, the Dallas supporting cast really stepped up in moments. Jalen Brunson was a key part of their winning round one against Utah, doing what they did against Phoenix. Like, it was almost like, as if, to extend your analogy, Mo Williams and Ilgauskas and I'm trying to think of one other guy, Delonte West, had a key playoff stretch in 2008. And then they say, you know what? Let's bring in Anton Jameson. Let's bring in Shaq. Let's not bring those guys back. LeBron, make it happen.
JaVale is the Shaq in this situation.
There you go. You got it. So it's like you actually get some signs of life from other guys outside Luka. That's what you want. That's perfect. So now you don't bring Brunson back. You bring in other guys who need to be more reliant on Luka, and you go, okay, great, you got it, kid. You're only 22. Like, I don't know.
I agree, and I also think it's a low key. If Luka is not on this roster, I think it's fair to say like this has been an absolute disaster of the last couple of years in Dallas. Porzingis, what ended up happening there, and then to get what you got back for Porzingis is just okay. That's a bummer. This kind of sucks. And then Jalen Brunson to leave as an unrestricted free agent and not to get like an Emmanuel Quickly, who would be nice if you had made the move. But there was a requirement where the Knicks had to give up some of their young talent to make that work. That would have been really nice. And I think we would all feel better about the Mavs because like I like Quickly a lot and he would have made a lot of sense here. And now I don't really know how he fits long-term in New York, but go ahead, Corban.
I was going to say another thing too. THJ is returning. Love Tim Hardaway, but like, let's not forget some of what made Dallas great. Lauren said it already, but like defensively, units, that you had Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie Bullock there. When now you bring a guy who needs to have shots to be effective and is a step down the defensive end. Yes, there's more minutes for him. That's great. But he's also not taking any pressure off of Luka if his shot's not falling. So now you have another subtle chemistry thing where, yes, he's been there for a minute. Hardaway has been there for a second, but like you look at the success Dallas had, that defense was rock solid on Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, everyone up until, Steph Curry and Jordan Poole. That's fine. But like, now you're taking one less defender on the floor for that moment, unless you are committing on small ball with either Christian Wood, JaVale McGee. Yikes. And I don't know. Oof. I don't know.
Is it just going to be Jaden Hardy? Is it? Is that the savior, Lauren? Is there enough? Like, how much pressure is on Jaden Hardy now? I just imagine like Mavs Twitter and like summer league stuff where you're just like, oh, high upside, because he was looked at as a steal. No one really thought he was going to go that low. He was a potential lottery guy. Like, is there enough there that you've seen thus far to buy into Jaden Hardy having an important role right away, and that kid would trust Hardy this early?
Oh man. I think the thing about this current Mavs coaching staff is that they are not desperately. They are trying to show these young guys that Dallas is an opportunity and a place that you can grow and develop and have an opportunity in. And so I think that they will trust Jaden Hardy. Do I think that they're going to put a lot of pressure on him and set the expectations super high? No. Personally, I do think, like, as of right now, if you're looking at the roster, the Mavs' path forward and strategy is really, it seems to be hope that Jaden Hardy pops. And that's not a strategy. And so with him specifically.